Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to Time Agent Series 1 to 3 ranking. At time of recording, I am filming it just after I've done the Time Agent Vlogs resuming video, but at time of it coming out, this should be the last couple of videos to come out from the Time Agent Vlogs, and then we are done. Maybe I'll do a last little video at the end. So, at time of recording, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this as a 2 or more part video, so I'm just going to roll with it. If it becomes that, then it becomes that. So, list here, use this list for the other rankings. So, it's got all of them on. So let's get down to Time Agent Series 1 to 3, including the specials and the Liam's Lessons, and Liam's Lessons, in a 22 episode ranking, including Liam's Lessons. Number 22 is... number 22 is Series 1, Episode 5, The Mortis Code. I think I may have explained in my vlog and Series 1 ranking, The Mortis Code is basically filler and setup at the same time, and neither of them work in the episode in its own favour, because the last episode was the one before was the Lone Troop, and the one afterwards is Dark Revelations, the great finale, the big finale, and this is supposed to be part 1 of that story. The last 2 episodes, in fact, this is considered a 2-part story, similar to the fact of Series 3 being considered a 6-part story. But the problem as an episode on its own is that it is pretty much following up from what happened in the last episode, as well as being the setup for the next episode. And really, not much actually happens. Really, only what happens is the Flower Aliens are up to something. Liam gets Danny back after he temporarily goes on leave due to getting upset after, spoiler alert, Ben's death in the previous episode. And then Ben does come back to life after somehow being brought back accidentally by the Flower Aliens as they're trying to get to Agent Mortis from inside the Mortis Code. And Liam actually talks a bit about this in this episode. So he's come to understand what this thing is. And that's basically it. That's all 12 minutes of the episode. I think it's the shortest episode besides the little specials like Liam's Lessons and all that. It's pretty much the shortest episode. Considering the next episode is the longest of Series 1 and also longer than one of the specials. Yeah. I don't know what happened with this one. I think it's just... I don't know. It's nice setup, but... Oh, and they find the forest where the TARDIS is in. But, to be honest, not really much happens. There's not really much of a... Like, you could have had a bit of a battle with the Flower Aliens, and then they're like, right, we need to build our forces together for the big battle later. I guess they're maybe saving the big battle till the next episode, but they could have had some sort of fight. The closest we got was Ben shooting them. That was actually funny. But... yeah, this one just feels like filler more than any other episode in the series. And yes, it's also supposed to be set up. It's good, but it still feels a little weak in comparison to other episodes of the series. So, yeah, that's why it's the bottom of the list. Despite a good story, it's not much happens. Okay, number 21 is... Now, this is Liam's Lesson, which is the Series 1 mid-series special. Now, the reason this one is here is because, well, really, it would have been last if it wasn't for Mortis Code, but this episode is basically Liam and Ben and Danny, not Dan the Cyborg, though, going around chasing Flower Aliens, basically, and recording to show you how to catch Flower Aliens. And, yeah, it's okay, it's good. It's not really an episode of the series, to be honest, but it's the closest we get to it. There's something else. And it's pretty good. It's situated halfway between Series 1, between the Flower Alien one. What was it? Hardly Human and The Lone Troop. And there's some good moments. But it's really just, meant to be quite a little... It's just a little bit of fun. Not much really happens. They're just chasing this flower alien, probably played by Sebby Tracy because Dan the Cyborg's not in it. Or Ethan Williams. And yeah, it's just a little bit... It's just something extra, really. But not really much of a story going on. That's why it's near the bottom. But also, it's not that long. However, it's supposed to be that way, as opposed to whilst the Mortis Code, yeah, that could be that way, but Mortis Code, I think, could have been a bit more than what it was, whilst Liam's Lessons fits well as it is. That's my personal feelings on the matter, so that's why I'm putting this one over Mortis Code, because I think that one could have been a little bit better, because it was so focused on setting up episode 6, and kind of also felt like a bit of filler at the same time. So the fact that the fact that it isn't more than it is a bit depressing, but despite, like I said, it was good, but could have been more. This was, as it was okay. It was really good, so that's why it's above the previous one, because it fits as it is. A short 5-6 minute minisode teaching flower alien hunters on the web how to chase a flower alien. So yeah, pretty much as it was. It worked as it was, and yeah, any complaint, if it was allowed to be a bit longer, it could have had a story. But it probably didn't need a story. But if they wanted to go into story details, that would have been fun. But as it was, it's just a nice little fun little adventure. But it's not perfect, but it's fun. It's good. It's only 5 minutes as well, so if you're watching them in order, it's only going to be an extra 5 minutes or so of seeing this team working together, minus Dan. But it's fun, and it's a nice little addition to Series 1. Also, bunks up this list to 22 episodes instead of 21, although if we were to split it, that would have been easier to do in 3 7s. Oh well, we'll see how it goes. Number 20. Now, this one I also didn't want to put near the bottom, but to be honest, there really isn't any other episodes besides the previous 2 I just mentioned that are actually... There's no episode that is... Sorry, all the episodes apart from the 2 I just mentioned are actually better than this. This episode is, if I was to compare it to the James Bond series, is the Dr. No to... Dr. No is basically the jumping off point for the Bond films. And like Calvin Dyson says, he finds that very vanilla, very kind of a example of what a film should be, and that's why he likes most of them more than that one. And with this one, it's this episode of Time Agents, it's similar for me. This was the I think you've probably figured out which one it is now. It was the jumping point for Time Agent, and it had a good plot, it had a very good story, but apart from Mortis Code and also Liam's Lessons, but if you don't count that, just Mortis Code, then all the other episodes are better. And this episode is Agent Liam. Yep, the first episode of the first series, and one of the reasons I think it wasn't so good is because, firstly, apart from being a first episode, it's trying to get the formula right. So, it's not like an Unearthly Child with the official Doctor Who series. That was pretty much standalone episode on it until it was actually becomes a 4-parter with the other 3 episodes. Not the best start, but that first episode was great. This one, it was a good first episode, but it was just an episode. It was basically a jumping off point. It's what the series later on would kind of follow the pattern. However, it is still quite a little bit basic story-wise, and whilst I won't bash against production values because it's a fan film, it's low or no budget. So low or no, as in nothing, budget. And the effects, I won't bash them too much because the effects thought I could barely do that. So I'm actually praising it, even though they don't look that great. And it was 9 years ago, just over 10 for maybe even for filming, nearly. So yeah, so I can't really bash it on a production scale because of the low/nothing budget and what they could use at the time, as well as what effects they could use in the editing software. And yet, whilst the chainsaws don't look that great, the Mortis Code, which we see throughout the series and a little bit in the next series, looks really good. So, and the effects do improve over time, especially in Series 3. We get to see a bit of that come into light in the specials. But yeah, and there's one thing about this episode I think that lets it down so much. It's okay as the first episode of Series 1, but I think the first episode of Time Agent, I really think there should have been a pilot episode. I think there should have been one episode shown before this one, and I think that should have been the one where Agent Liam arrives on Earth, where he meets Dan and where he meets Ben, and they decide to make the Time Agency, or at least that branch of the Time Agency. Liam's got no memories, and he's somehow managed to find the Mortis Code. You don't need to have the TARDIS in it, you just have to have Liam running through the forest. Maybe he's lost his memories, or he's losing his memories as he goes through. He meets up with Dan. Maybe he's injured by this point, because in Fallen Hero it said that the Zachatrons attacked him for some reason, and so Liam will fix Dan and make him into a cyborg. Maybe he fights the Zachatrons as well. Then they set up the Time Agency, and then they meet Ben, and then they have an eventual just to settle in the story, or maybe they don't have to worry about the adventure. Maybe it leads into this episode. And then we have this episode where they meet Danny. And then they fight the chainsaws. And then the series and then that's where the series begins. But we've already had the pilot to establish the other three characters. Whilst in this one, they just come running in and we don't really have much of a time to establish them. They develop, but they don't get they develop and we get a little bit of establishment later on. But for the first episode, they don't really arrive. They arrive, but they don't really have much of a background. So that's why I thought there should have been a pilot episode to explain Liam, Dan, and Ben's backstories a little bit more. Just a little bit. And then we would move on to Series 1 with this episode starting off. The pilot could have been called Agent Liam, and this one could have been, I don't know, something else, the Chainsaws or something. But yeah, I think, or the other one is The Pilot, and this one is Agent Liam. So, yeah, but I think that's the big problem with Agent Liam. I think because it's the first episode, it suffers a little bit of the fact that there has been some sort of history. It may work for Torchwood, but I have to check that out. And the fact that they actually did eventually go round to explaining the characters' backstories in a later episode of that, whilst Time Agent, they only mention Dan's and start developing Liam and Mortis's, but they only show a little bit. In Series 3. But Ben's backstory doesn't even get told. Apparently there's an audio out there, but at filming I'll do this for a vlog, but you'll probably see that vlog by now. But still, it would have been nice to see all visuals, or even told. I don't know what his backstory is. So, yeah, that was Agent Liam. Number 19. Number 19 is another Series 1 episode. Series 1 is going to appear on this list near the bottom, not quite a little bit. Actually, no, not really, to be honest. This is the last one for a while. Okay, okay, number 19. This one is another Series 1 episode, but don't worry, this will be the last one of Series 1 for a little bit. Number 19 is Hardly Human. This is the third episode of the series and the best of the odd-numbered ones, but that means all the even-numbered ones are going to be later. This episode sees Dan, and then later Dan and Ben, kind of take on the Flower Aliens. In a pretty good episode. does try to work with Dan taking centre stage for a bit, as he later he tries to rescue the other members of the team, but then Ben escapes, and then Liam escapes, and he has to try and rescue Danny, but I guess Danny escapes because I think he only appears at the start and maybe at the end. Maybe that was Ben at the end. But yeah, I guess it's because Matt Williams had to play a lot of flower aliens in this one. But I say it's supposed to be Dan centre stage, but for a little bit it does divert to become Liam, and then it goes back to being Dan quickly. Not sure. And then I'm not sure. It feels it's a good story, but I'm not sure. I've got this feeling that it's not quite as good as some of the others. It's about Agent Liam for the fact that it actually is kind of working. It actually is a better story than that. And Mortis Code, filler. This one actually has a bit more of a story, mind you. This is the only time the Flarians speak. I'm not sure why that is. And they mention that something is coming, similar to the Chainsaw saying that they have this big boss, but we never find out who or what it is, unless they're referring to Mortis, but there was nothing to suggest it was Mortis in any of the episodes, so maybe it was the executive. Again, nothing too suggestive, or Katrina, or maybe the big villain of, who would have been the big villain of Series 4. Nothing to suggest it, so maybe it was supposed to be more than 6 episodes. Oh well. Okay. But, Hardly Human's alright. Oh, and Liam kind of shouts quite a bit. Every now and again, it's kind of shouts like, "Don't know yet, it's a piece of alien technology!" Not sure why, that was just a decision they decided to go for that episode. Didn't exactly work. Okay, number 18. Number 18 is actually the first special, excluding the Minnesota ones, the first of the 2009 specials, Earth's Guardians. Now, for a while, this had been originally my favourite of the 3, but for the 2 rewatches I did before the vlogs back in the summer, it actually turned out to be my least favourite. Well, not least favourite, so to speak, but had the weakest story. We got Dan back in the centre frame again. This time it's actually utilised a bit more. And he's having to try and fight the Zachatrons. But it's not yet revealed that it's these creatures that attacked him in the before he met Liam. That's revealed in Fallen Hero when they next come back. And it also sees him and Ben recruit Bob and trying to solve work as they are before the Zachatrons attack, whilst Liam is away. And sadly, Danny is dead after the events of the last episode, and that's why they've got Bob, because they need new employees thanks to a time agent representative who later becomes the executive. Because apparently this character who appears in this episode, the representative played by Christopher Thompson, is the executive in Series 3. That is really cool. And it's also a character that they can actually use again, unlike with Laura Dakin's character in the previous episode, because Mortis killed her, so she can become, but the actress would later become Katrina Mills in Series 2. Not Series 3 though, but Series 2 she could, so that's different characters. And similarly, John Granson's Jerry Smith's a recurring character, and then it's later revealed he's Captain Andreas Tobias. So, very clever twist, by the way. Great use of that in Series 3. We'll get around to that soon. But, in the end, Earth's Guardians is just weak. It's good in story, but it's pretty much the weakest of the specials. It's got tops over the previous couple of episodes, as the story's slightly better, and it's kind of more enjoyable. But compared to the other episodes of the specials, and Series 2 and 3, and the remaining ones from Series 1, it is kind of weak. It's actually kind of... the specials was kind of a Series 1 to 2 transition period. It was kind of more Series 1, but they were slightly moving towards Series 2 a little bit, especially later on. I would say Fallen Hero is a bit more like 2, but the specials do feel very Series 1 with elements of 2, and hence the transition period. And yeah, it's a good story, but it's easily the weakest of the specials. That ranking, I think, was pretty quick. Pretty easy to do. Okay, number 17. I think we might stop after this one for a bit. Number 17 is Crescent Street. Okay, this is my least favourite from Series 2. I think it actually has the weakest story. Liam is going to this street known as the Crescent, or Crescent Street as they called it in the episode. And it seems that there's this time spidery thing that is kind of doing stuff there. And Dean basically can't go in because he's travelled with time. He's travelled in time, so... But eventually he has to go and stop the creature before it creates a time rift. Or an antimatter. So, yeah. Whilst this is happening, Hannah wants to see Dan again. And this time she's actually armed with a weapon after Liam leaves his base open. As she says, he's an idiot. Although she does kind of forget the fact that Liam is trying to be a hero. So when she's having a go at him for leaving the dangerous alien technology around, oh, you're not the hero. She does forget he is actually trying to save the world, and Liam does try to remind her of that later. I'm not really the biggest fan of Hannah's character in this series. Although I think she is better in the previous episode, just a little. I think there could have been some slight improvements if she was in more episodes. She's not in episodes 4 or 5. But maybe if she was like I said, maybe if she was a time agent, then maybe her character would have been a little bit better, and there could have been a bit more conflict. But as it is, it's alright. Robin's also pretty good in this one, probably better than in the previous episode, as he's starting to find his groove. But yeah, he's good in this one. He also almost takes charge on Liam's orders when he goes in. And Dan's pretty great in this episode as well. And he's really good. And oh, I love some of his lines. Also, if I can complete this mission, I'll get a free sticker. Yeah, well, Dan's always great. And Seppi's always great as Dan in most of these episodes. So yeah. It just turns out to be my least favourite of the series, though. The Spider's also a pretty weak villain. Even if he's a powerful antimatter creating creature, he's still a weak villain. I don't suppose it actually needs motivation, but it's still quite a weak villain, and yeah, Liam has to defeat it by just going and touching it. Well, that actually sounds okay. It could have been any creature. It's just that it just didn't really do much, to be honest. Liam actually managed to defeat it easily, despite looking like he was in pain. Well, I say easily, it was probably a struggle for him. But he did it, so yeah, things are looking interesting. But he did it, so yeah. I don't know, it just didn't feel so good. But it was okay. Number 16. Okie dokie. Number 16. This one, we're going back to Series 1 for this time, and it is Metal World. The second episode, and I also forgot to mention that Crescent Street was the second episode of Series 2. Series 1, Episode 2, Metal World, is a good story. It has some good moments. I still think it could have developed it a little bit, but it's good. It's for a low budget fan film. It's a good story, especially as this one's a bit more set in the house than the last one. And they kind of use it really well. as their setting, and the spoof lord's actually pretty good. Well, he's quite funny, and he's like holding the gun like this. Let's make a deal. Yeah, and I'm not sure what the point of the robot flies was, or the alternate dimension, especially considering Mortis was able to get into that alternative dimension before then crossing into our dimension with the fob watch, which Liam gives the spoof lord in this one in exchange for protecting Earth. And that spoof lord doesn't really do anything with that fob watch, at least not by the time of Mortis coming around, unless we've not seen it. But he's just holding it, unless that scene takes place literally after this episode ends, which probably would. But then again, I think he's calling the house, which is then seen in that episode. Oh, boy. Unless it just doesn't get through until he comes over. Some things are starting to not make sense. And why the flies are there when the spoof lord's dead in the 6th episode, I don't know. But Metal World's an enjoyable episode. They're looking for the flower alien who makes his appearance at the start. That's the flower alien's first appearance in this series, although not in the well-built universe, I don't think. And then we get a good story about finding alien technology before the flies attack, and it's revealed the spoof lord's behind it. Apparently he's also a character from the well-built universe who appears in other stuff. It's nice to see that, as the Caillou from Jamie Carroll's universe fan films in the 4th episode. Caillou becoming the Cyber Caillou. Okay, let's do one more before we wrap up this part. Let's call this part 1, and we'll do it. Do the first 8 and then 7 and 7. So let's wrap up with number 15. Number 15 is Redemption of Mortis. Okay, Redemption of Mortis. What can I say about this one except the fact it's a good story about Mortis seeking redemption. However, it doesn't start that way. Okay, it's a good way of making us think he's not, although the title does kind of give it away. But at the same time, sorry, there's a guy on the roof across the road doing some repairs or something. At the same time, it's trying to make you believe he's not quite seeking redemption until about halfway through the story. And also, Robin believes Mortis killed his team. Of course, we don't find out it's somebody else until halfway through Series 3. So the mystery and the conflict between these two characters is really good, especially later on in the series and the first half of the next one. And also, we see the return of the Venators from the specials. And yeah, that's very good. And get some good moments with them. This time I think they're both voiced by Billy Tracy instead of one by Billy and one by Sebi. But it's still a pretty good episode. It's still really good and really enjoyable, and it's got some very good moments. And yeah, it's alright. The reason I don't think it's down here is because I think there's better episodes in Series 2, and as well as other better episodes in the other seasons. It's got a better story than Episode 2, but I think there are better episodes out there, and that's why it's this low. It's also not the most enjoyable one. It's good, but it's not the most enjoyable. Okie dokie. Okay, rounding up the end of part 1. I think I'm going to go in with a part 3, a 3-part video. So, that's the end of part 1. I'll see you for part 2.